So welcome everybody to StartupSac Happy Hour, or StartupSac, formerly what used to be called StartupSac Happy Hour. Now we've rebranded it Startup Happy Hour because we are now collaborating on this with the Carlsen Center. We have Cameron Law and Arlene Miranda representing the Carlsen Center here with us tonight. All right, before I jump into the interview, I just want to give a quick shout out and recognition to StartupSac's sponsors, without whose support we wouldn't be able to do things like this. So thank you to Nivigen, SMUD, our new sponsor, Bender Insurance and Stoll Reeves, Weintraub Tobin, Witten Law, and Modetta Ventures. And without further ado, I want to open it up to the interview portion. But Camille, why don't we start off with you just talking about your background, where you grew up, what your interest in entrepreneurship was, if anything. So how you got started as an entrepreneur. Basically, I want to hear the story of from MIT to Microgreens after that, how the idea for Hamama came about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And first, thanks so much for having me and see some familiar faces. Hi, Cameron, of course, Fourth Wave, Jeff and John from StartupSac, Laura, Erica for our staffing partners. Thank you. So really excited to meet the rest of you as well and connect with you, and excited to share the story of Hamama. To go way back to where I grew up, I think we had a Northern Virginian here. I'm from Maryland, so woo, Maryland area-ers, DC area. So I grew up in right outside DC in Maryland. I actually was not very exposed to entrepreneurship, I would say, though looking back had inklings, lemonade stand, getting out there with my snow shovel, trying to beat all the older guys trying to get the front yard work. So looking back, there was something there. But I was really interested in making more from like an artistic perspective. And then in high school, started channeling that into the engineering side of things. Went to a science and tech program for high school, and then went to MIT and ended up studying mechanical engineering. In high school, I was exposed to some urban agriculture stuff in my neighborhood and got really interested in that. Kind of forgot about it when I got into MIT. Was like, I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. Didn't see the common threads yet, but at MIT, ended up spending the second half of my undergrad in that space exactly, building and operating larger scale indoor controlled environment farms, growing all kinds of produce in the lab year round, and getting really excited about the power of indoor ag to provide the freshest possible produce for people no matter where they live, what the season, cutting down on food miles, water usage, land usage. And so Hamama came out of really seeing a really interesting kind of public reaction to that work, where people would come through the lab, be like, oh my gosh, you're growing food without soil. What are these crazy cool lights? Can I do some version of this at home? And we started to understand kind of the home gardening market, and saw how inherent and interest this is. 1 in 3 households in America already grows food in some capacity. We were like, if we could retool this indoor ag tech we're working on for the home D2C application, there could be something here both on, a food production level in terms of a hyper distributed, means of producing food, and then on an individual consumer level, having an opportunity to impact people's access to fresh veggies, and get those veggie servings in. So
you
that's
actually had some
MIT Microgreens story.
Market
Sorry,
validation.
Jeff.
You actually had some market validation, which actually kind of sounded like the people coming in and asking about it kind of was your market validation before you even had the idea to do it, which is kind of the reverse of how a lot of people like, oh, I have this idea, I want to do this now, I need to go out and validate that there's a market for it. So did it take you a while to figure out, well, yeah, there's people want this, maybe we should actually do something about it and start a business around it?
Yeah, I think there was a sense of, and I met my co-founder, by the way, Dan, who's Hamama's COO at the lab as well. So we were doing this research together and kind of, watching things unfold together and, being that sounding board and kind of realizing, oh man, there's so much out in industry that we could be doing. the academic side was really interesting, but it also felt like really long-term, lifetime kind of work in terms of the research we were doing, where we saw this market interest and we were like, oh, we could have an impact, today or tomorrow, if we could get this right into people's hands. So yeah, I would say we definitely, it's nice to hear you say that, because I think when we left the lab, we felt like, oh my gosh, we have no idea what we're going to do, but we knew what space we were going to be in and what we wanted to deliver to the customer. We didn't know exactly what it would look like. We didn't know what the Hamama seed quilt would look like, what our grow kit would look like yet.
So let's talk about the technical. Describe your product a little bit. I'm not really familiar with microgreens. Maybe you can explain for anybody else here who's not familiar also. What exactly are microgreens and what is your seed kit? How does that work?
Yeah. So microgreens was something we hadn't even grown in the lab before. Microgreens are the baby versions of veggies and herbs and leafy greens. So the 7 to 10 day old versions of these veggies, really good for you. Up to 40 times more nutritiously dense, according to some USDA studies that came out in 2012. So any veggie or herb, so broccoli, we all start as babies, veggies included. So, you plant your broccoli seed. If you eat it at this, 2 to 3 day mark, it's sprout. If you eat it at the 7 to 10 day mark, that's microgreen. With baby greens, it's kind of, 14 days is baby green. So we're focused on the microgreen phase of life for the crops, and we chose that because it is as instant gardening as you can get, right? Waiting for, a couple months for a tomato or full head of cauliflower isn't the same oomph or stickiness factor, which you really need in the e-com and subscription, as planting something and a week later harvesting something functional and edible for your diet. So that's how we came to microgreens. And then our technology is the seed quilt. So that is a new kind of seed packaging that combines the grow media and the seeds in a mess-free, super streamlined way, so that it actually controls the environment for growing as well. So it's kind of a passive automation mechanism, where the automation we were doing before in the lab to control the environment was sensing and computing. We took that knowledge and built it into this more passive automation. So it controls the watering by wicking up the water from the grow tray below as it's needed. The top layer of the seed quilt is a kind of paper cover that mimics a layer of topsoil and provides a certain amount of pressure as they're growing, also blocks out light during the germination phase. And then as the seeds push against it as they're sprouting, converts that cover into a humidity dome, which they then can break through, or you can peel the cover off. It's like a big reveal. It's super exciting. And then they have access to the more humid or less humid, more light-filled ambient environment to finish the growing process.
Cool. So maybe walk us through a little bit of a timeline from you developed the idea in the lab at MIT. You decided you wanted to go out and basically productize this. What year was that, and what was the trip from going out of the lab and at MIT to now you're here in West Sacramento actually, and you've hit $1 million in revenue? What were some of those milestones along the way that were key to you?
Yeah. So we left MIT in 2016 and launched the product in December of 2016. So we took about 6 months to really kind of deprogram and reprogram for, business, really, right? Okay, we were able to build stuff because it was cool or because we could answer research questions. Now we need to build stuff because someone's going to pay for it. So doing the market research, doing interviews on the street, prototyping, user testing, and thinking about pricing and go to market. So those first few months we were doing all of that, and then once we came up with the seed quilt concept and kind of honed in, okay, this is where we're going to start. Everything was geared to, all right, let's just kind of see what happens. Throw it up on a website, go to farmers markets, pitch Molly Stone's grocery stores, and see what happens.
And were you still at MIT then?
No, we left. So we had we started the business after a, clean kind of break after leaving the lab.
And did you come out, did you move out here to West Sacramento, or was there an intermittent stop?
Oh, yeah. So we came to San Francisco. That's where my co-founder is from. And so we really, did the early stages there, we're lucky enough to have a garage to work out of, keep burn very low. And then we went through 500 startups, and that was really pivotal for us. First cred, first funding, first formal mentorship. And then we were in a 500 square foot spot in the Mission in a shared warehouse at that point, making our product. And we, came out of 500 thinking, okay, we could be anywhere. It doesn't make sense to scale this business here. We're not going to be hiring, software engineers in the near future. We need, operational, ag, supply chain, marketing talent, and Sacramento, packaged it all together in kind of a perfect, like, oh, that's where we should be. That makes so much sense. So now we've been out here a year and a half, and really grateful for the city, the startup infrastructure here, the community. Going through the fourth wave program was in winter of last year was really helpful for, really feeling embedded and making friends. I'm starting to go to some StartupSac events before we started getting shut down, but all to say, really thankful for the community here.
Let's dive into that a little bit. With fourth wave, and you mentioned 500 startups, talk a little bit about how important have those accelerator experiences been for you as a startup becoming successful?
Yeah, so pivotal. Yeah. Just so important. Yeah, I think with 500 startups, like I said, it was the first real, street cred. It helped us, get customers, raise our next round, really package ourselves as a business, as well as, figure out the business engine in terms of sales, operations, hiring. So it really kind of kicked us off at that stage where we were just like, all right, we have literally no idea. Everything is terrifying. Hiring our first person, spending our first money on advertising, all of it terrifying. But there were people to say, this is okay to try. This is a measured risk. Go for it. This is what I did. And then with the fourth wave program, it was more of the really personal side of it, where 500 might have been more kind of like a boot camp, just 10x that revenue, raise that round. Fourth wave has those metrics as well, but really is holistic around building that community that's going to support you along the way, asking, how are you going to do this, learning about your leadership style, and kind of building the language for what I would call the people side of things. At least that's where I mostly dove in with that program, though it offers a ton of facets. That's what I was really excited about with it.
Cool. So I saw you a couple of weeks ago. You were on a panel discussion with the NABO and I think the Rotary Club, was it? Recognizing what they call fempreneurs, female entrepreneurs who have broken $1 million in revenue, which is really impressive, I think. So I was wondering if you could share what you think were some of the critical factors that got you to that milestone. What changes did you have to make in your business plan to reach that 1 million in revenue milestone?
Yeah. What changes did we have to
or
make?
just what were
Um,
pivotal or key things you think were essential?
yeah, a lot of those leaps, first funding, first hires, first ad spend, but all you know, built on the confidence gained from, you know, slugging it out, standing in Molly Stones, talking to people who are totally disinterested or, trying to make farmers markets work, tweaking, A/B testing, messaging. I think being solid in um, what we were offering and what our value was and why customers were buying, which, I'm still exploring, but having this a semblance of at the beginning and seeing the early traction, having the early customers that love us, always going to be haters, but knowing there are people out there who love you and there are more people out there who are going to love you, and just having that confidence to make those big leap decisions. I think I often would find myself like stuck in a cycle of, with farmers markets, for example, it was just the two of us co-founders. We would spend the whole week manufacturing the product in the garage to sell on Saturdays and Sundays, and making not enough revenue to really, keep the business going. And it was just like, okay, something has to change to unlock the next level. And so the cycle of like recognizing when you're in one of those cycles where it's like, all you want to do is keep doing it and just keep up with the race, but it's actually stop, get your warehouse space, stop, hire someone, stop, get the funding you need. That's going to get you to that next level of $1 million or whatever the goal is.
Yeah, so you touched on a good, interesting point though. You've got you obviously have to have inventory, I assume, and a warehouse space. So you've got a lot more spend that you have to do than say a software startup. So how was it for you to manage that cash flow of like you said, you have to get a certain amount of revenue so you can get more inventory, so you can get more. How did you manage all that?
Yeah, so cash flow is a really big part of the business. I think one of our early mentors called, e-com businesses like hungry hippos. Like it's just feed cash into it. Like you just got to keep finding cash. So, understanding the cycles of the business is really important to understand. Like, okay, if I spend this on advertising and get this many customers, this is when it's going to pay back, and this is the payback period. This is the lead time on inventory. These are the terms with the suppliers. Okay, to make this all work, do I negotiate these payment terms with the supplier? Do I, try to get that CAC down, that cost per acquisition? Do I grow more slowly because this cash situation isn't even feasible at all? So it just takes really careful modeling, and then also research and exploration of all the tools that are available to you. I think nowadays there's all of these e-commerce tailored tools too, and you have to be careful because they're very expensive, but they're also incredibly useful if you know the business dynamics of when you're going to be able to pay it back. But things like revenue-based financing, working capital lines, credit cards, on top of, VC financing, if that's the route you're going, I think should all be options that folks look at.
So what strikes me is how much you have to learn, and it always strikes me with these interviews with entrepreneurs is how much, you obviously didn't know all this going into the business, so you had to learn all this, right? So talk through a little bit how you went about learning that. Was it just reading? Was it your advisors and mentors? Was it learning it through your cohort at 500 Startups or Fourth Wave? What were the key things to learn how to make all these decisions that you were faced with?
Yeah, I think other people is the biggest thing. I I do um, I do like to read or listen to podcasts or read, certain blogs or stay up to date on certain newsletters. But it can also kind of be info
Mhm.
overload. and just too much, versus having a group of people that have done this before and who have your back and who you can go to for questions like this, and maybe have a few different opinions as well, because there's not going to be a right answer. It's a lot is also just like, yeah, gather the research and then you'll kind of know what feels right for your context. But founders who are 2 or 3 or 4 years ahead in a similar position, whether it's regarding hiring or cash flow or raising, and then having the mentors who are maybe 10 or 20 years ahead and have seen it in 3 cycles in 3 different scenarios, is kind of the order of operations for me when I'm doing my research.
So I think you mentioned that when you started in West Sac, did you say a 500 square foot space?
In San Francisco, we were in 500 square feet.
So now you're in West Sacramento. How big is your space there, and how big have you grown as far as space and employees and whatnot?
Yeah, so we moved from that 500 square foot spot into 8,000 square feet in West Sac. And then we moved in August. I guess it was just about a year later, we moved across the street into 24,000 square feet. And now we're leasing out the other one. I'd say we've gone from 12 when we first moved out to now 50 overall.
50 employees?
Yep.
Wow.
Another shout out to Erica here on staffing balance, for helping us get there. Had to scale up really quickly for Q4. Q4 is huge for us. Build in those processes for recruiting, training, now have an HR manager. And that's all because we do the operations in-house. So we are running production and fulfillment. And now we're also getting into more marketing department and kind of upper, ops management. So check out our careers page, please.
Before I forget, let people know what your website is, and maybe Laura, you can type that in the chat.
It is hamama.com, HAMAMA.
Okay, .com. So could you have imagined when you launched this in 2016 or 17 that you would be where you are today? I mean, that's a huge amount of growth. How does that feel? I mean, do you just stop and think back, kind of struck by how much you've grown?
Yeah, I think I want to take more time to do that and think back.
You don't have the time to think about that, right?
No, it's important to. Yeah, it is. I would not have thought. But then on the flip side, I think I'm also here because I did have the chutzpah to think it was possible, So it's like, we hoped we would get here. It maybe seemed unlikely, especially at times. But it kind of feels like that, you got to visualize what you want in 5 years. And that's the way that you'll get there. But it definitely is. I mean, if I go back to, 10-year-old Camille before finding engineering or knowing about entrepreneurship or that you could start your own business, I'm like, what is going on here? No way.
Well, and I guess that was a leading question, because I want to ask, what are your plans to grow? What are your growth plans, pun intended here, for a year or 5 years down the road? Where do you expect to be, or where do you hope to be?
Yeah. So man, in 5 years down the line, I at that point would love to be at the $100 million mark, and have really become well known in the US. And I think one of the biggest growth opportunities for us is international, just in the way that kind of we were sitting in the lab seeing things happening and inklings of opportunity. Folks are always asking, when are you coming here, when are you coming there? There's a whole wide world beyond the US, and I think that'll be huge for us. And I'm excited to build. I love traveling and learning about other cultures, and doing that in a business capacity sounds even cooler. Because like, not traveling and going places just cause you get to meet folks and talk to customers, and that just sounds really exciting to me. Have a much more built out team, rocking on marketing, ops, customer success. So thankful for the team that is hustling every day right now. Would love to see people that are at Hamama growing and succeeding with us, and seeing customers all around the world getting their veggie servings in.
So let's hear some ego stats here. How many customers or meal or kits have you sent out? Or do you know that off the top of your head?
We have reached more than 100,000 customers now.
And that's right now, that's just in the United States, right?
That's just in the United States, yeah. But we've reached customers in every single state, growing year round, more than 100,000. What else could I tell you? Oh, I just wanted to recalculate how many pounds of veggies that correlates to.
So let's go back to the hiring a little bit. What was your first, one of the questions we often get from people is how to decide what your first hire is going to be. So talk us through that a little bit. What was your first hire?
Yeah, our first hire was on the production side of things. So we were manufacturing everything ourselves. We had produced semi-automated machinery to make our seed quilts. And it was not clean. It was not a clean process yet. It was pretty intensive, would require a lot of training. But I think there was also just kind of personal blockage of like, no, control, like can't hand this over to someone else, like this is too crazy. And that was just totally false, so, and as soon as we were able to hire on production and have people able to inform improving the training process and kind of take it and run with it, it was just a really exciting moment of, oh my gosh, yeah, the most important thing is to hire people who can do everything that we're doing in kind of a mediocre way, so that we can do what we do in a focused way. So I think I would love to, we're kind of working towards the founding team being able to be really focused on product and customer and longer term strategy. And so I think that should be the goal. It's like, okay, what's keeping you from thinking about longer term strategy? And just write the job description.
Excuse me. So it's March is Women's History Month, Women's History Month, and we've been trying to focus on women entrepreneurs who are making history, as Laura likes to say. But historically, women founders have a harder time raising capital. There's a lot of effort being made to change this, of course. But what are your experiences with this? Have you had an issue raising funding as a woman, and does it help with having a male co-founder, do you think?
Yeah, I bet it helps to have a male co-founder. I think the statistics show that as well. But typically I'm the CEO, Dan is the COO, so I'm the one going out and raising. So there's not really like that male presence. I feel optimistic, though I know what's working against me. But I think that often what may be happening on the very beginning side of things is the kind of access to networks. And I think joining things like 500 Startups, Fourth Wave, building your founder community can make that happen. So now I feel like really happy about my community and being able to get in touch with folks if I want to. Mm-hmm. But I do think there's a sense of, wanting to make sure I'm presenting myself in a capable, confident, way, and being more thoughtful about that I might not if I weren't a woman. But again, the kind of, okay, as difficult as it is, rationalizing it by saying, all right, well, we did a lot more in a much more capital efficient way than other people, and that in the end is great.
Mm-hmm. Are you fundraising right now? Raising another round?
Always, it feels like, but I are always thinking about the next one. So yeah, if yeah, I'm close to, what can I say? This isn't really like a public forum. Yes, I'm raising right now.
It just occurred to me. So you're essentially a food startup. You're in the food and ag space in Sacramento. It's often touted by Greater Sacramento and others that their ag and food startups are one of our strengths here. So I'm wondering if you can talk about your experience in that community here. We have some players in the community here, Ag Start, and some startups here who are well known. I saw Pam Marone on here a little earlier today. So talk a little bit about the ag and food focused startup community here in the Sacramento region, and if you've been involved with that very much.
Yeah, I went to a StartupSac event with Dr. Marone and was so inspired to hear her story. It made me think, man, yeah, this is perfect. And I think we're very cross category too, right? Like some people are more ag leaning, some people are more food leaning. We're kind of both, and it just feels even more perfect because you're growing with us, and it's purely about, access to nutritious food and adding that to your meals. So yeah, it feels like a natural fit. And I think, something that I feel is really valuable too is having a network of people who are, have kind of maybe a tangential or similar mission, and are trying to cater to a similar audience and reach a similar audience. And if you're non-competitive too, having that group that you can share, strategies with, whether on marketing, on supply chain, hiring, a lot of these, ag and food companies probably have folks who have very similar interests and interest in what impact they want to have on the world. That is just such a valuable network.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I think I've got a couple more questions, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. But one thing I like to ask people is talk about what biggest challenges you had to overcome as a startup founder, and what was key in overcoming that challenge? On the spot here.
Not trying to get a real job before things really took off. Yeah, I think sticking out till it really feels like you have the flywheel going.
Having the grit and determination to stick with it.
Yeah, because it can be really if it's like, okay, people aren't buying, investors aren't investing, people aren't answering your email, at first when, it's, you're just trying to get it off the ground. You're the only one that really has any reason to believe in you. I think I jokingly asked who was it? My grandfather or my mom, did you think this was going to work when you invested your couple $1,000s? And they're like, no. I was like, okay. So yeah, just being, owning that the confidence has to come from you, and sticking it out, being optimistic and practical at the same time.
Awesome. So last question, then I'm going to open it up, is what top piece of advice do you have to the aspiring entrepreneurs who are either here in the room or will be watching this as a recording?
Yeah. Well, I think that segues nicely, the optimism and pragmatism. So keeping that balance as you go. Having the optimism to grit it out and figure out the path, because there is a path, but having the pragmatism to understand when you're not on the right path and making that change to get there via the right path, or path that has a bridge, whatever it is. What else would I say? Build that support system. Find the people who are a year, 2 years ahead of you in the journey. Talk to everybody. Gather research everywhere, right? Like, go to the grocery store, ask the produce manager, how are these microgreens selling these days? What's wrong over here? Or, eating lunch in line at the food truck. So, do you do any gardening? Just info gathering all the time. And then pitching all the time too, and getting the word out.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we can help you get the word out through this as well. So
appreciate it.
Thanks, Camille. And now I want to open it up to questions, and I'm going to rely on my co-founder, Laura Good, to help me moderate those questions. She just typed into the chat to get your Zoom hands ready. If you have a question, raise your Zoom hand. Laura, help me figure out. I know Laura's got questions. She always does, but have we seen anything?
I always have a lot of questions. So here's a question for you, Camille. As far as hiring professional services like a lawyer or an accountant, which one did you go with first, or do you have any regrets about how long it may have taken you to realize that you needed a service provider?
Oh, yeah. Definitely in a similar vein to kind of the hiring, where if it just, it's hurting and, feeling like a slog, and definitely have regrets about how long I stayed in the slog before making that change of using a bookkeeping, accounting, fractional CFO service, getting, being okay emailing the lawyer for an important question and not being like, oh man, this is going to be a $2,000 phone call. Be careful though. But luckily have found great people. And I think another piece of that is knowing when to graduate. I think that where to start and when to graduate too, where there's maybe more automated software bookkeeping options, but it'll make sense to use kind of an outsourced accounting firm. And then, you should do your financial modeling yourself, but at some point maybe it's getting ready for your first price round. You're going to want something really legit that's not like, Hamama accounting, we used to call it. And then on the legal side, we have actually been lucky enough to stay with the same group since the very beginning through a referral. Always ask folks if they have a good referral. You guys, I'm sure, have a bunch. But did I answer your question, Laura?
Yes. Yeah, you did. And our next question is from Arlene.
Hi there. Where did the name Hamama come from? Was it always called Hamama?
Yes, it was always called Hamama. And that was kind of a, should we, shouldn't we? We went the evocative route, obviously, instead of, calling it seed quilt, which I thought was a little, not broad enough, right? Like, wouldn't let us grow. Now we have non-seed quilt based products. So I'm glad for that. But Hamama means greenhouse in Hebrew. It means dove in Arabic, and it means it's a waterfall in Hawaii. So it has all of these wonderful meanings in different languages. And also kind of nurturing, right? Mama, Mother Earth.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, so Justin has the next question.
Cool. Hey, how's it going? Hey, really innovative company and idea. I really like the just the idea. I thought it was very innovative. I'm curious if the seed quilt, is that proprietary technology that you own, or could somebody else make that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Justin. So we have filed utility patents around the seed quilt. Yeah, we want to be, the best at making new seed quilts, manufacturing the seed quilts. So, part of the reason we do it in-house. Yeah, we're currently patent pending on probably more than a dozen applications in our portfolio, and getting through and kind of going the non-provisional route on a few now, which is exciting, and that's kind of a first for us too.
Really cool. Has a nice recurring revenue model too, and I like the idea. You've got the I don't know, it just seems like you've got a lot of things really well thought out in terms of taking the customer and making it more than just a one-time purchase, right? It's so very nice.
Yeah, the subscription element is key for us, and building a healthy routine too, right? Like, hopefully this is so easy that it's a small little part of your daily healthy routine.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I think William had the next question. He typed it in the chat. William, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to?
No, I can certainly ask.
Okay.
So, I mean, right now, just, it seems like it's a business model right now that's a business consumer. So is there any plans for maybe a more commercial focused in the future? I mean, I know I've seen some, what do you call them? Greenhouse farms for micro veggies starting to pop up here and there. So is that kind of a play for you for a maybe a different scaled product for that market?
Yeah, I think that that's definitely an opportunity for us, and we do see the really cool thing about the product is that because it's so easy to grow just one, it's also so easy to grow 5, right? So my dream is for every household to have 5 trays going on rotation for every person in a household, growing all of your veggie needs. So the idea of scaling up is so in line with why we created the product, and that applies to B2B farming too. So I think we definitely have interest there, and I could totally see building a Hamama sales department in that vein one day. At a bigger scale, I think we'd really need to improve our gross margins, because at that point, the message is totally different, right? We're offering a ton of convenience to customers currently, and you pay for that, versus in the B2B scenario there, it's going to be all about cost of those inputs and impact on the farm's bottom line. And I have a feeling we're not there yet. But wholesale, restaurant, catering, I think are also big opportunities for us, and something we are looking to grow in terms of percentage of revenue for the business.
All right, so Kelly has the next question, and then John Nabrady.
Thanks, Laura. Good evening. Hey, Camille. So I've seen startups kind of lag in terms of kind of building out the HR side of things. So at what point did you know that it was time to get an internal HR manager?
Oh man, what do you do?
Well, we do HR and safety consulting. So I was just kind of curious to hear like what pain points you discovered kind of internally where you knew you needed to bring somebody in-house.
Yeah. I think it was really when I was like, she knows the struggle. She must be involved somehow. But thanks for the question. I think getting a critical mass where it just feels, where it's like the evenings are spent, the evenings have to be spent as a full-time job, a second full-time job to, answer the payroll questions, emails, do the benefits, make sure insurance is covered, scheduling, performance management. It just all built up honestly way quicker than I think we realized it would. And also wanted to be thoughtful about having that person who could spend the time to think about culture and the type of place we want to build for people to come into and spend a third of their day every day, and just proactively, improve that. So I think it was probably around the 40 people mark that we found the right person there, Lauren, who has now taken that on. And I'm sure will be its own whole department one day, or we'll need more partners one day.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, John O'Grady has the next question.
Hey there. Just curious, your decision to sell on Amazon, was that difficult? Did that require a lot of changes to your operations or process, or was it pretty straightforward?
Hey, John, good to see you. Thanks for the question. We've kind of gone back and forth on Amazon, honestly. I think we started selling there, and then we were kind of like, this stinks. You know, we can't even interact with the customer really. We saw our reviews going down on Amazon because so much of our brand is around the onboarding and support and community experience that when you take that away, we just sensed that people weren't having the experience we wanted them to. And so that's something we've gotten better at. But when we did take ourselves off of Amazon, we started seeing that, you know, other people were buying our keywords, and that meant that people were searching for us on Amazon. And so our mentality there has just been, you know, okay, if customers want to buy on Amazon, we need to meet them there where they're ready to buy, and have a presence there.
Cool, thanks.
I don't see any other hands, but I know people have questions. So of course I have questions. I'm curious, I was looking on your site at all the different varieties of seeds that you have. And I think there's like 3 standard ones that come with your kit, and then you have some other ones. What's your personal favorite? And what are some of the, if you can tell us, what are some of the seeds that you're thinking about launching in the near future, or that customers have been asking about?
Ooh, okay. Thanks. All right, let's see. So we have 10 different varieties of seed quilts, from, you know, the kind of powerhouse veggie ones, hardy broccoli, kale, salad mix that has cauliflower, cabbage, arugula, all the good stuff in it, to then more kind of, you know, the spicy ones like spicy daikon radish, hot wasabi mustard, zesty mix. So I kind of go between clover, which is most similar to alfalfa sprouts, which is super homey for me. I would love cream cheese and olive and sprout sandwich. So good. Go make it. Clover is your go-to for that. For flavor, love the hot wasabi. So definitely try that. And then in terms of what customers are asking for, some of the more popular microgreens I would say are like sunflower and pea shoots. Those are so tasty. Would love to get those in the mix. And then herbs, micro herbs are even more flavorful. So micro cilantro, micro basil, I would love to launch those ASAP. So tasty.
Those are 2 I would love to have.
Ooh, okay.
I live by myself. So you go buy a big thing of cilantro or a big thing of basil, chances are it's going to go bad before I have a chance to use it. So
yep,
if it can add that flavor of cilantro or basil, I'm in for those kits. So
all right. I'm
writing.
I'm going to write this down in our as another tally for cilantro and basil. Thank you.
Yes.
Me too.
And I noticed that you've also added green onions to the mix. And
Yes.
people had told me before that you could plant the bulb of a green onion and just use the other part. And then I saw that you have this whole setup for that. So how's that going, the green onion business?
That's going well. We actually accelerated that product release because of COVID, because it became something it seemed everyone was doing. They were, you know, I think a lot of you might already do it where you can, right, like you said, plant the ends in a planter or in a mason jar with some water and regrow your store-bought green onions. So that's what our product lets you do in, of course, an upgraded and beautiful Hamama way, where you plant up to 39 green onion ends and can actually grow like 10 feet of green onions a week. So in the vein of, reducing your grocery store trips and expanding your Hamama garden, it made a lot of sense for us. And existing customers seem to love it and are the bulk of our purchasers. And then now we're also testing it as kind of like a new entry point where maybe a customer who doesn't know about microgreens or needs some more education on microgreens will definitely know about green onions. And maybe that's a new kind of point for us to open the market. And then on the back end, educate on microgreens and why you should eat your veggies that way.
Right. And when we look at like software startups and we talk about them building their minimum viable product and starting with that, and then, going to other features and functions, I've noticed that you have, I'll call them accessories. So beyond the grow kit and the seed quilts, you now have, I think, a bamboo case that you can put the
right
seed thing in. You have, I've seen shelves. I don't know if you sell those or if that's
yes.
just what other people have done. So that's those cost a lot, I'm sure, in terms of inventory dollars. So when did you reach a point where you wanted to offer the accessories? I think you probably didn't offer them from the get-go, or I could be wrong.
Right. You're right. Yeah, it was definitely not part of the minimum viable product mix. That was just, we started with 3 different varieties of seed quilt flavors and our grow tray. But we saw people not purchasing because they were very particular about how their kitchen looked, or letting us know, oh, I would love to see something like this. And so it was pretty soon that we added our bamboo frame. It was during 500 startups, actually, I would say. So maybe 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now it's a bestseller. Most people will add it right away. And the grow shelf is part of making that idea of having those 5 trays growing on rotation. When you're at that point growing a ton of your greens, how do you actually, it kind of creates its own new Hamama problem, right? How do you put that into your home in a beautiful, easy, convenient way versus we were seeing people with one on top of your microwave, one on top of your fridge, one on the litter box or whatever, So it creates this kind of Hamama throne in the home that's also functional.
Oh, great. Well, it looks like Luciano has a question, and if others have questions, please ask them.
Yes, thank you, Camille, for sharing your time with us. My question's more to something you mentioned earlier around your fundraising. Can you elaborate a little bit more about kind of where you are in your fundraising? I'm assuming since you came out of 500 startups, you said you did some kind of rounds around. Is this kind of like a Series A, pre or post Series A, and kind of what kind of structuring are you doing around that in terms of, are you looking at who's going to lead that, if it is that, and are you looking in Sacramento area or other geos? Can you share a little bit about that?
Can I add, Camille, before you answer that? There's some things that Camille would need to answer privately because she's not soliciting funding here during this meeting. So I just throw that out. Camille, if you don't feel comfortable answering any of that, if you don't want to, I don't know how close it gets to general solicitation, blah, blah, blah from the SEC, but I just wanted to let you know. Yeah.
Thanks for highlighting that. Yeah, that's what I was saying before. And I was like, is this a public forum? Is it not? But happy to answer as much as I can, Luciano, and more later if necessary. But we have raised 2.2 million to date, and that has been on safes. So we use, besides the 500 startups KISS investment, they have their Keep It Simple security. That's very easy and more like a convertible note. And then there's the safe, simple agreement for future equity, which is just much quicker and makes more sense in terms of not setting a valuation too soon when there's not too much to value anyways. So what I will say is that, you want to not raise too much on safes at the same time and get to an equity round as well to convert the safes into shares. And so that is kind of a whole nother fundraising process with finding a lead, to set the terms, do the diligence, and then having, rather than a more rolling close, which is feasible with safes, having kind of everything ready to close, and do the round all together, which is then also more like legal fees wise is also a bigger endeavor.
So Luciano, did you have a follow-up question? Or did
I do, yeah, I mean,
okay.
but it's fine. I can take that separately, since it seems like it's kind of a border sensitivity question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We'll move on to Harsh Verma then. Harsh, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. Thanks, Laura, for that. So first of all, Camille, that was an excellent presentation. Again, my questions are actually somewhat close towards the fundraising that was asked earlier, but maybe, and you know, please feel free to let us know if you want to answer that now or maybe later separately in a private thing. But as a Sacramento startup, you know, tell us a little bit about the challenges that you had for fundraising, if it's possible for you to, what kind of percentage or initial interest investment you got from any Sacramento angels versus outside VCs? What were the VCs that came up first? You know, do you have any support from Sacramento VCs, angels, and things like that? And so the second question is actually regarding your product launch on Amazon. What kind of efforts did it take? I know you mentioned that you went for it and then you came back, but then you finally went for that again, you know. So two separate questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, the Amazon question is easier. So it does not take much at all to get set up on Amazon, but it is huge street cred. It's like, congrats, you're on Amazon. Anyone can be on Amazon, super easy. But definitely like good reputation builder, I think, also for people who you know, might feel a little weird about buying something from a company where the Instagram only has, you know, 500 followers and trusting their processing, you know, system versus, oh, okay, you know, they're on Amazon, they must be legit. On the funding side of things, we did most of our fundraising prior to the move, I would say, and through COVID had most of our network from prior. I think, you know, there is a great ecosystem in Sacramento, and I'm sure that we will have that representation in our future rounds, and I would love that. And I think just by nature of the community here would be a big value add in, you know, in food, ag operations, and growing this kind of business. The mix of investors is actually really national. So we have, you know, New York VCs, we definitely have San Francisco, we have Canadian partners, so who are working with us. So I think what was cool about the last raise too was that it was all on Zoom and effectively was even easier than before COVID, and it was just easier to connect with people. And I'd say now our cap table is going to be much more diverse because of that.
Excellent. Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'll ask a question as we wait for others to raise their hand. What I usually ask lately is how did COVID impact you? What pivots did you have to make? What adjustments did you have to make, if any? Was it harmful? Was it helpful? Because I know it's been a boon for some people.
Yeah, for us, it was definitely a scary time. It was like, okay, are we gonna be an essential product in people's minds and wallets and hearts, or is everything gonna dry up? And I think, you know, we hoped and had hypotheses that it could be really good for us, and we ended up seeing that when shelter in place went into effect and people were limiting grocery store trips, it made a lot of sense to stock up on seed quilts as your means of, you know, stocking up on fresh veggies. where that's going to be your limiting factor dictating how often you go to the store. So we saw people from every single of our cohorts stocking up on seed quilts. We found it was really easy to acquire new customers. And so the business did grow. What was really scary was, just the day-to-day of keeping our team safe. We were in a warehouse that was getting way too small, so making the move happen into the larger space. Meanwhile, keeping social distancing, enforcing the rules, yelling 6 feet at each other all the time. But we were really lucky and haven't been really impacted, either revenue or health-wise, which we're super grateful for.
Awesome, thanks.
All right, so we've got a hand raised.
Erica.
Erica, go for it.
Hey there, Camille. I think that the marketing that you guys do is just brilliant and beautiful and just very simple and well done. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about us of how your marketing plan started, where you've chosen to spend your money, and where you might see some better ROI than others.
Thanks, Erica. Yeah, definitely happy to share on that. And thanks for the nice words. We're very, I think and it's kind of born out of being scrappy too, is that we're very kind of DIY, user-generated content driven, not hyper polished, fancy, look, though, a little polish could help us out. But we aim to be really approachable and be, a mainstream product, not just for, the tippity top. We want, to see a really diverse household income range. We want to see we're reaching folks suburbs, urban, rural. So, I think our best tool has been both existing customers and referral and sharing of their own stories on social media, which garners organic, interest. So many shareable moments, right? Planting, watching what happens every day, and then of course eating and plating your food. And kind of influencer sampling at the beginning was really big for us. Really cracking paid social media ads was one of the biggest reasons that we were able to grow really quickly. And then now kind of the reaction to that is that when you get to a certain stage on that kind of a spend, that you want to balance and diversify with as many other channels, of course, as you can. So we're looking at new platforms, we're looking at mail, we're looking at partnerships, and just always trying to find the next channel that's true to, we can deliver our message in a way that's true to us and reaches the right customer base where they're buying.
So I don't see another hand raised at the moment. Of course, I have another question. Do you use influencer marketing as one of your strategies?
So we use it in not yet a formal enough way. It's something that's on my roster for this year. We do sampling and kind of inbound right now. We used to do 50 to 100 samples a month. But I would love to, for this year, I would love to create a process and team that is just out there building great relationships with people that love the product and whose audience would love the product too.
So there's a Sacramento startup called Grin.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with them?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I've got that. I mean, that's the perfect tool for building the processes around. So Sacramento startup.
For those of you who don't know, Grin is a Sacramento startup that has an influencer marketing platform or solution, I guess I'll call it. So, and they've been growing pretty fast too. So, Jeff, you wanted to say something?
Well, the mention of influencer marketing reminded me of Greg Connolly and Elizabeth Connolly at Trifecta and how that has been key to their growth. And so it's like, if you want to connect with fellow entrepreneurs in the region who have cracked influencer marketing, you got to reach out to Grin and Great Connolly at Trifecta.
Okay, that is awesome. I actually am meeting up with Liz from Trifecta soon, so I got it. So
Yeah, that's going to be key for you.
figure this out. Yeah,
they've killed it. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, that's like, yeah, that's the dream. If you can grow at the rate that you want to on referral, organic, influencer, that and paid social is like just a small piece of it. That's the dream. And yeah, would love to get there.
Yeah,
I'm putting this in my notes for my Trifecta meeting. Sorry.
I'm sure it works better with, some products than others, but Trifecta is also a subscription service. And I don't know, like the Hamama person, like their target customer, although it's more than that, is athletes. But I mean, yours can be athletes to, hippies left over from the 70s, kind of thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of kind of segments. It could be recipe publishers, parents wanting to do this with their families, gardening, green living. Yeah, it's totally untapped. I got to get on this.
Yeah.
I'll throw out another resource. We had Greg on, I think in June of last year. So it was recorded here on Zoom, and he kind of walked through their whole inbound marketing strategy. So we've got that recording on our website if you wanted to check that out.
Okay, sweet. Actually, that's Laura, you sent that on the Fempreneurs chat. I gotta send that. Great resource. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm curious who here is also a startup founder. Maybe you could use reactions and put a thumbs up or whatever in reactions. That would be cool to see. If I know we've got some. Yeah, we've got there's more than are responding right now. So I know Dominique is a startup founder, and
everybody's feeling shy. And Cindy was on here, and Juan was on here, and
yeah, there were definitely a few, but cool. So Daniel has said this is very encouraging, and I agree. Don't want to. We'd love if there's any more questions. We're kind of getting down to last chance to ask a question. After questions, we have a few announcements, and then we're going to have the random drawing for this wonderful Hamama starter kit that we've been talking about. So last chance to raise your hand.
Or just pipe in.
And it doesn't have to be a question if you have.
Luciano's got his hand raised.
He does. Okay. Go for it, Luciano.
Right. Yeah, maybe it's a little existential, but in your experience, what do you see as maybe the biggest thing that's missing from the Sacramento ecosystem that you think would have the biggest bang for the buck for startups and founders? Anything that you've seen that you thought, wow, I wish this really existed here?
Wow. That's a really good question. I need to phone a friend. I think
maybe not.
I mean, the welcome, the welcome that we got from like the Economic Council was amazing. That we've been able to find the great partners we need. What's missing? Got my female founders in fourth wave. More of us, just missing more of us. We need more entrepreneurs. That's what I'll say, because the more the merrier.
More density, yeah.
More density, that's the word, yeah.
Higher density.
Excellent. All right, anyone else have a question? You could go ahead and just unmute yourself at this point if you want to ask a question. We'll see if that doesn't get too crazy.
I will say this, somebody typed in her chat, she had to leave, but just making sure that Camille saw this. Regina said, greetings all. Camille, you are an inspiration to me. I'm a woman in business striving for food justice for low-income residents. She wants to stop by your location. She's specializing in healthy soul plant-based food. So just a
That's
shout out that
awesome.
you're inspiring people here.
That's awesome. Would you be able to give her my info? You probably have if she left.
Laura, we probably have Regina's contact information through Eventbrite, right?
Yeah, she's registered, so
Okay.
I can do
Awesome.
that.
Okay, we have a couple
But yeah,
questions.
feel
Camille.
free to connect on LinkedIn, Camille Richman or Camille@hamama.com. That would be awesome.
Awesome. So William asked a question. William, do you want to unmute?
Yeah.
Or
no, that's fine. I mean, I was kind of multitasking, watching your videos as well. So there was a piece that you have to keep the kit away from other plants and fruit baskets. Why is that?
So that's more precautionary. So you don't want plant disease or molds hopping onto your Hamama grow setup. So more a matter of like safety. Normally, it'll be fine, but if something does happen, that's the very first thing our customer happiness team is saying is like, you got a moldy avocado next to it or something. And if you move it, clean your grow tray, you're going to be fine. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, last chance. Anyone else? All right, well, why don't we move on to announcements?
All right, well, so
it looks like there was one more.
Wait, we got one more. Kendall Treebs raised his hand. Go, Kendall.
Yes, I was curious on, since you and Trifecta, everyone has a co-founder, how important you think it was to have your co-founder, and if you thought you could have done it on your own, or if he thought he could have done it on his own.
Oh man, thanks for the question, Kendall. Yeah, I could not have done this on my own, or rather it would have grown like crazy slow, or not have grown. Idea would have never happened. Yeah, I am friends with a couple solo founders, and I'm just like, it's possible, but it's incredibly impressive to me because I haven't had to do that. Basically, I have the pleasure of checking in on the ops side of the business a few times a day or week versus having to juggle everything. So Dan, Hamama co-founder and COO, is just like amazing, and finding that right partner who both you can build the product with, ideate on every part of the business with, and then divide roles with, is just huge. So having that from the start is awesome. Are you a solo founder?
Sort of.
It's possible, but tough, I'm sure, but you'll make it happen.
Thanks.
So the takeaway is find a co-founder, probably, right? Any other questions you see here, Laura?
I don't see any more. Cameron, do you see any more questions?
I do not see any more questions.
Cameron, you have any last question? I know Cameron's a little under the weather today, so I don't want to put him on the spot, but do you have any that...
You don't want to put me on the spot as you put me on the spot.
No, I'll give you a pass. It's your chance, though, if you do have one.
I've got to hear Camille speak multiple times and appreciate her being here and sharing her story and inspiring others. So
awesome. Thanks, Cameron.
Yeah, so let's wrap this up. We're all hungry because we've been talking about food.
All right, so I want to give a big shout out and thanks and applause to Camille for taking her time out of her busy day to come in and talk with us and share her experiences. So once again, that's hamama.com, HAMAMA.com. Right, I got it.
Nice.
And so that we'll send out an email to everybody who attended with follow-up and the links to this recording and whatnot, and that'll have a link to her website as well. So thanks again, Camille.